This
So,
conference will now be recorded.
so I'm very much sorry for not having a clear-cut record of what was happening yesterday. So let us start with the presentation, continuing from where we left yesterday. I think I've finished ecchymosis. I was about to start erythema. Okay, so I'll start with erythema today. Erythema, as the name suggests, is a skin condition characterized by redness or rash. So it's basically a reddish, angry skin. Okay, as the Greek name says, erythros meaning red. That is basically an increased circulation of blood into the skin because of any of the reactions that is pertaining to the skin. It can be from extraneous cause or from an intraneous cause. There are two types of causes in erythema. It can be from outside or even from inside. Type of erythema, like from outside, it can be photosensitivity, erythema nodosum, many types of it. Skin injury, infection and inflammation can also create erythema. So it's a broad spectrum term that is being used, and most of the times it is also being misused also. So photosensitivity is one among the major causes. Herpes simplex infections can also create erythema ab igne, erythema chronicum migrans, erythema induratum, which indurates, erythema infectiosum, that is usually following a herpes infection, a reddish lesion that stays back, that is called as erythema again. This is a classical example of a winter erythema. This happens in people who are not accustomed to winters but are living in places which have a heavy winter. Uh, Usually tends to develop these kind of lesions in their body. Hematoma, it's a bigger form of what you have already studied as pap, like purpura and papules. You'll go to them later. A hematoma is a localized collection of blood outside the blood vessel, but it is usually in liquid form, but it is within the tissue. Okay, and ecchymosis is a also called as a bruise that is greater than 10 millimeter. A smaller one is a hematoma. Okay, usually it means to say that there is a bleeding inside your body. Okay, and this is, it's very much possible that the hematoma that you see on the skin surface is possible inside the body. So as a practitioner of dermatology, what you have to assume is, if the patient presents to you with a tendency of a hematoma, an easy hematoma formation even with a subclinical trauma, it means to say that he can develop significant trauma inside his abdomen. Okay, so when there is a bleeding outside on skin because of minor uh, injuries, that means to say that it can happen even inside the body. So I have given details of uh, like hematomas inside the body in detail because they are more critical than what you have as a cutaneous hematoma. So my common thing is subgaleal hematoma, that is inside the brain. Cephal hematoma, common presentation in cases of uh, your forceps delivery or vacuum delivery in children. Cephal hematoma, epidural hematoma, usually following a hit onto the head. It is usually an adage in neurosurgery that in people who practice proper neurosurgery, they say that if you see a hematoma outside on the skull that is big enough, there is every possibility that the same size of the hematoma is inside the skull also. So if you see a hematoma on the scalp that is big enough, make sure that the patient goes for a CT before you start treating it as only a dermatological complaint. Okay, so it can happen in the epidural, subdural, and subarachnoid spaces. That's academic, and this is what happens. You can have an intramuscular hematoma that is within the muscle. This usually because of severe trauma, like this. In this case, this is a knee hemorrhage, a hematoma in the knee. This is an eye hemorrhage, a hematoma in the eye, but it is very much disclosed. This is a hematoma in the thigh, and this is the hematoma in the nail. Okay, this kind of hematoma is very much common, or this kind of patches that you see as a hematoma is very much common in patients who take anticoagulants, not your usual anticoagulants like ecospherin or clopidogrel, but a combination of warfarin, low molecular weight heparin. These rashes indicate that the patient has an easy bleeding tendency, a hematomatous patch. Very much important. So again, coming to the morphology slide, in which you will have an idea. Why I am putting these morphology slides here is to better make you understand that these are lesions which raise the skin. Okay, they are elevated lesions. So as you see here, a comedome which pushes out the skin, burrows which pushes out the skin, which means these are lesions which separate dermoepithelial, dermoepidermal connections. Okay, furuncle and carbuncle, usually complications of diabetes. Furuncle and carbuncle, they're one and the same. If a single hair follicle is involved, you call it as a furunculosis. If multiple of them together are involved with interconnections, that's called as a carbuncle. Comedones is another lesion which you see. It's usually a plug of keratin with sebum wedged in it in a pilosebaceous orifice. So basically, the place from your hair come out, that opening is being plugged off because of excess of keratin tissue. So it's very much common in patients who can have any kind of lesions which increases the keratin, like in case of psoriasis or other lesions which can increase the skin count, or it can even be obstructed by outside components. So in those cases, what happens is you will have a small bump, okay, usually on the forehead, chin, etc., because face is the usual site, because that is the most prevalent part of sebum secretion. So that's the usual site. Open comedones are blackheads because surface the opening is plugged by keratin, which is superficially lined again by melanin. So they look as blackheads and hence are called open comedones. Okay, and closed comedones in which there is no melanin pigmentation, they are closed comedones, also called as whiteheads. Solar comedones, none of these pathologies happens, but because of the radiation from the sun, usually older people tend to get comedones developed. Okay, so the last sentence is very much important. If you have a chronic inflammation inside a comedome, whether it be a blackhead or a whitehead, over a period of time, there is every possibility that it can secondarily get infected by bacteria and cause as a pustule. It can produce pus, and in that case, you call it as an acne. And in these cases, obviously, releasing out the pus is the treatment. Okay, so this is an open comedome. As you can see, white dots. These are closed comedomes, which are called as whiteheads. Okay, and this is the cross section of a comedome. Can you see that? You can see the keratin layer being suppressed in multiple layers and even melanin spots over here. Can you see them? So this is a comedome. Next is a burrow. A burrow is a linear or a curvilinear papule. It is an elevated lesion, but this is usually caused because of mites of organisms that is actually penetrating deep into your skin. Okay, they are produced by linear lesions, that is infestation of the skin by formation of tunnels. They create tunnels inside the skin. Usually it is scabies mite, head louse, bed mites can also create this. They can produce linear or serpiginous patterns inside the skin, common presentation in scabies. Burrows, I have already shown you here. What is a burrow? The second one over here, that is a burrow. It causes a linear pathway. This is the entry point and there will be an exit point. So that is a burrow. Cyst, very common lesion in skin. When I say about cyst, one thing you have to understand is all cysts are not malignant. There are benign cysts also. There are even categorization of cyst as congenital cyst and acquired cyst. Many people might develop congenital cysts. And in cyst, one more thing that you have to understand that wherever you have a dermo-epidermal connection, or wherever you have a epiderm, ectoderm, and mesodermal connection, that is usually a site of cyst, which is called as an inclusion cyst. Okay, so in those areas, you tend to have cystic lesions, and these are usually benign lesions. Okay, though they get elevated, they are benign lesions. Second thing is, some people might have a cyst, but when they go for a rapid weight reduction, like they go for a rapid weight reduction or you do a Langhana therapy in them, the cyst becomes obvious because cyst is usually covered around by good amount of adipose tissue. Okay, so when the patient goes for a crash diet or when the patient fasts for so long, usually the cyst becomes more apparent in the patient. Common examples are sebaceous cyst and epidermal cysts. This is a cyst. Cyst can also get secondarily infected in that kind, which is very much common. This is a commonly very common present of cyst. This is called as a canthal cyst, which is usually an acquired or sorry, not an acquired, a congenital form of a cyst. This is usually found in children also. Ganglion, you might have seen many cases of ganglion. This is another form of a cyst. Okay, usually an aspiration of a ganglion would be nice if it is affecting carpal tunnel. Otherwise, ganglions usually doesn't create any problems, so leave them as such. If it is causing carpal tunnel, because ganglion usually happens in the flexor retinaculum, you can do a aspiration. Most of the times, the content would be liquid or slightly thicker, but definitely aspirable. Abscess is very common in surgical language, very much important. Thick walled cavity containing pus, usually it is because of dead foreign materials or dead organisms, along with the body's defense mechanism, which contains leukocytes also. So it's an inflammatory response, and usually it is accompanied by a increased white blood count and all features of edema of inflammation. They are rubor, pallor, dolor, and loss of function. Loss of function may not be apparent, but all the other four, rubor, pallor, and dolor, I hope you know all of them. Redness, pain, etc. Rubor, pallor, and dolor, classical signs of inflammation, are present in an abscess. So this is a external abscess. Okay, in this kind of a lesion, obviously you need to doubt about tuberculosis, assuming that there can be a tuberculosis pathology, pulmonary cause possible. This is another abscess. This is one in the psoas region. Another suspicion of this tubercular organism. Papilloma, medical term for a tumor-like skin or mucous membrane with finger-like projection. Papilloma usually created by papilloma viruses. So this is a viral lesion. They are very much potent. Why they are being separately said is because they have a high potency to tend to go to malignancy. So papillomas are found in many areas, usually at areas where your skin integrity is lost. You can see multiple warty lesions. What you call them as skin warts in the neck of a patient who is pre-diabetic. That is called as acanthosis nigricans, a blackish lesion at the neck. That is usually a indication of pre-diabetes. And in those people, you tend to have multiple warty lesions because the skin immunity locally has been reduced. Okay, so papilloma infections, like you see in this case. Okay, this is acanthosis nigricans is not much apparent, but multiple papillomas, usually because of deficient skin immunity at that locality. That is why that causes papillomas. Poikiloderma, as the name itself suggests, there are multiple skin conditions at a single place. So there will be hypopigmentation or hyperpigmentation. You can have telangiectasia and atrophy. That is the usual combination that happens. It is usually found in the chest and neck, and it can happen because of usually a vascular phenomenon. So most of the vascular phenomenon like vasculitis, vascular problems, vasculitis, for example, or hemangiomas usually will not much of hemangiomas, but vasculitis for sure gives you poikiloderma. Multiple pathologies you can see. I'll show you the images in the next one. Okay, in the image you can see here. You can see, can you see this hypopigmented patch over here? At the same time, you can see a layer of skin which has melanin content inside it. At the same time, you can see furuncles being formed. There is gross disfigurement of tissue. So you can have whitish lesion, erythematous lesion. At the same time, you can have a brownish background all together. Even in this case, see white dots around an erythematous patch. Okay, so multiple patches coming together, that is poikiloderma. Secondary skin lesions. So still now what we have dealt was primary skin lesions. Now we are going to secondary skin lesions. Usual form of them are here. Okay, so a scaling, normal scaling, this you know. They are also called as crest formation, but if they are formed of bigger plaques, they are called as scaling. Usual accompaniment of infection like psoriatic infections is possible. Second is psoriatic like pathology, and third, when you have scaling, is when you have a sudden edema and it drastically reduces, then also you can get scaling. Crusting is usually solidified keratin or exudates. So the skin layer, along with the, usually this is a secondary morphological change of a bulle or a vesicle in which the keratin actually breaks off, and the content of the keratin, which is usually serum, tends to accumulate in that region. So the crust is formed usually by that serous discharge that comes out from that your bullous or bullous lesion, that is usually called as a scab, commonly seen as impetigo in children. Very important. This you might have seen in some children. This is a pustule, this is a bulle, as you can see on the nose of the child. Okay, which has, and there were some here that has broken up and created a dried pus and blood exudate, that is also called as honey colored crust, very much present in a condition called as impetigo in children. Okay, so again, coming to the morphology of secondary lesion, why I'm saying separately the morphology of secondary lesions is, see, if you see the previous morphologies and all, this dermoepidermal connectivity was somehow intact. It was elevated but not affected much. But here, if you see secondary morphologies, most of the secondary morphologies tend to go into epidermal layer, be it an erosion, ulcer, fissure, obviously atrophy. Sclerosis is one of those disorders which doesn't go into the um, dermal layer, it only affects the epidermis. So starting with erosions, it is the loss of epidermis, only the epidermis is peeled off. Okay. Usually this is a accompaniment after a vesicle. So if you break a vesicle, you are not affecting anything below the epidermis. The dermis is intact, so they tend to heal off easily. Okay. And this is a skin defect. Okay. Only the epidermis is peeled off, and common presentation is this is toxic epidermal necrosis, very much present in cases of meningococcemia, scalded skin syndrome in cases of children when they have a high ASO titer and tris O titer. Common presentation, skin erosions. So this is a skin erosion. Can you see the difference? The dermis is intact, so you don't have much of bleeding happening here. It is just the epidermal layer that is being taken off. Okay. So toxic epidermal necrosis, only the epidermal layer is lost, not the dermal layer. Second is ulcer. Ulcer is, in this case, the dermis also get involved. The epidermis and the dermis gets involved. So a thicker area of skin is involved. It is a skin defect. Usually, traumatic ulcers, stasis ulcers is your bed sore, stasis ulcers, or pyoderma gangrenosum, or traumatic ulcers. Classical example are these. Pyoderma gangrenosum, and this is a stasis ulcer. It is also called as a decubitus ulcer in patients who are bedridden for a long time. This is the condition. As you can see here, epidermis is also lost. So is the dermis. Okay, so these wounds tends to heal pretty late because of the depth factor involved. The next one is excoriation. This is usually because of scratching that is caused, that usually uh, shows a sign that the primary lesion, whichever is being causing this, is very much itching. And we have also studied in the Copner's phenomenon as well as the signs of dermatology that when the scratching increases, those areas can also get involved into the pathology. So that is why excoriation is also considered as a secondary morphology. So linear excoriation in case of an patient with atopic dermatitis, you can see atopic dermatitis in the antecubital fossa. Okay, as we said yesterday, the distribution antecubital fossa. Fissure, it's a deep ulcer, but here the length and breadth component is less, the depth is high. So it is a three-dimensional image, so length and breadth is minimal, but the depth is high. So anatomically, they are called as fissures. You can develop in the base in the foot in long walk. People who walk a long distance, it can also happen in fungal lesions, fissuring. This is a fungal lesion with fissuring. This is a fungal nail with the fissuring of the lunula margin, this region. Okay, this is a fungal, again, infection causing these are common in soles and where hyperkeratosis is present. Okay, I hope I'm audible to all of you. Hello.
Yeah, audible, sir.
Yeah, okay. So I'll go to the next one, that is atrophy. Atrophy is acquired loss of a substance. The basic word meaning of atrophy is it basically means that there is a loss of substance, whether it be skin or any other layer. So when you say atrophy, it means a decreased mass of tissue present at that location. So this usually appears as a depression. Okay, so the thickness of the skin suddenly gets decreased. Okay, so all the dermal layers tend to become thinner and the skin becomes suddenly shiny with very less thickness. Okay, so epidermal atrophy causes decrease in the number of epidermal layers and epidermal atrophy. If you can see these lesions, you can understand. See, these are the layer of atrophy where you can find that there is a depression, there is a decrease, or there is a uh, depression, or there is a thinning of the skin layers present over there. The next one is lichenification. It is a distinctive thickening. The usual, why I am saying it as a distinctive thickening is if you work usually with your arms, with your uh, dorsal surface of your hand, ventral surface of your hand, sorry, not dorsal, ventral surface of your hand, usually you will develop callosities. That is not lichenification. If the normal skin is continuously rubbed against any hard surfaces, there is a possibility that the skin can go into lichenification, and that is usually caused because of chronic rubbing and autoimmune reactions. Okay, so this is a lichenification. So atopic dermatitis was caused in the antecubital fossa. The patient started scratching it and created a lichenification. Okay, you can see that there is a lichenification over here. Next is scar. Scar, obviously, you know what is a scar. It is secondary to a trauma. So a sort of a ulcer happens inside your body. The body tries to heal it by scar formation. Why scar is important? Scar determines the depth. So if you have only an epidermal layer, as we have already discussed in the case of just an erosion doesn't leave a scar, but an ulcer leaves a scar because ulcer involves the dermis, and when the dermis is involved, it heals by extensive fibrosis, and that fibrosis is what you call as a scar. Okay, so the scars can become erythematous, hyperpigmented, all those forms. This is a scar tissue. You can see appreciate the scar tissue. This scar is also something you can see. This is a hypertrophied scar. Okay, you can have this in uh, people who have a tendency. If you remember the previous class, lines of Langer, if you don't properly follow the lines of Langer, this is what you create for a simple wound closure. Okay, you have created a big hypertrophied scar. Keloid, it is basically an exaggerated growth of a scar. It's a benign overgrowth of connective tissue, which is abnormal healing process. Usual healing is by a scar formation, but if the patient has a tendency towards keloid formation, he tends to go into a keloid formation. Usually in like as in race, much found in community of blacks. Okay, black community, not like skin black. The African species, African genome tends to develop a higher predisposition towards keloid formation, and that can lead to serious aesthetic and disabilities. I'll show you a slide of a patient whom we have treated here. So this is a patient which we have treated for a ganglion in their hand, and you can see that there is a bigger keloid tissue being formed. Okay, we have done only a needle aspiration in this patient, as I have said in my previous slide of a ganglion. In the the slide of cyst, we have only aspirated, but this has created a keloid. You can see over here. Okay, and this is a case in which earlobe repair was done, and you can see the earlobe repair with a laceration, mild laceration on the face, and you can see the extensive keloid formation being happening. Okay, and this is another case in which this keloid is found at the site of anesthesia. Okay, that is a post-auricular block that has created a keloid over here. Sinus, a cavity or a channel that permits escape of pus or fluid. It can be congenital or acquired, like in cases of preauricular sinus. Pilonidal sinus is an acquired one, which is usually found in the natal cleft. Preauricular sinus or post-auricular sinus or dental abscess is again acquired, but preauricular sinus is something which is congenital because of development of the pharyngeal pouches. See this in the case of a child, this is a preauricular sinus, and this is formed because of pharyngeal pouches. While this sinus, this is a dental abscess, and this is a pilonidal sinus. As you can see, multiple sinuses opening up and exuding pus. This is a single opening of a pilonidal sinus. That is in the natal cleft. Okay. So next is striae. Striae are linear, atrophic, pink, purple, or white lesions with which has a distinct change from the connective tissue below it. This is usually caused because of sudden decrease of size of a trunk or organ. So in cases, and it can also be caused because of metabolic syndromes, like in case of Cushing syndrome. Cushing syndrome, the classical diagnosis is so simple that if you have striae in the abdomen, okay, greater than 5 in number, and the oxbow hump on the back, a humpy lesion on the back, like swelling on the back, that is usually an indication of Cushing syndrome. And pregnancy induced striae, that is striae gravidarum, very much common because of sudden decompression. Once the fetus is out, there is too much excess of skin, and the epidermal layer tends to break off, revealing the dermis outside. So you can see this is the typical path in there. Okay, so these are the layers of epidermis that is being evident outside. just like what you have seen in the case of an erosion. This is lactation induced striae, okay, post lactation. This is because of this can even happen in people who suddenly go for a keto diet and reduce their weight. They tend to get these stria markings. Nothing to be done in those cases. You give adequate time, make sure that the skin layer is protected, the epidermis grows on. Sclerosis, usually very it is often a secondary accompaniment to fibrosis. So the body, when there is a continuous inflammation at that area, when there is a clear cut ulcer and there is adequate nutrition, the body starts to heal it by fibrosis if it is deficient in any manner, or if it is over a connective tissue, like for example in cases of um, tendon, ligaments, etc. Like in case of what you have seen in that case of keloid, there you can have a sclerosis. So it's usually a very much prominent in connective tissue rather than undergoing fibrosis. It prefers a sclerotic type of ending. So places where you have connective tissue, that is your collagen tissues more. One is the ala nasi, the tip of the nose. That's a common place of sclerosis, as you can see here. The second is the base of your the lunar margin of your skin, and this is a skin sclerosis, pretty rare but happens, not usually in Indian race but happens. Okay. And as per the nails, I need you to understand these parts of the nail: the cuticle, the eponychium. This is the area where you have more of collagen tissue. This is the nail matrix from where it derives most of the blood supply, and this is the nail plate, which is an epidermal outgrowth. Okay, so what things you have to check in nails is personal history, drug history, very much important. Patients in chemotherapeutic agents, they tend to get a vertical line that is usually present in a drug called as Zivodine, a chemotherapeutic drug. It is also possible that contour of the nails is abnormal in cases where you have anemia, prolonged anemia. Usually, prolonged anemia without treatment, usually the patient will have a spoon-shaped nail, also called as koilonychia. Color of the nail, usually you have changes of color when you have a hematoma, you have splinter hemorrhages. That is very much important. If you have vertical lines which are black in color, multiple vertical lines which are black in color, also called as splinter hemorrhages, that is a sign of endocarditis. Mostly in, they are having some issues with the heart, do always an echocardiogram in them to see whether there is a mitral valve vegetation on the mitral valve. Changes in the matrix of the matrix region of the nail, very much common, which is also called as your Shamrod sign. When you have pulmonary pathologies like COPD, prolonged COPD patients, will have a peacock shaped nail. You do it as a clubbing test, which is also called a Shamrod's test. So that is an increased amount of erythema or increased amount of circulation in the nail bed, which causes the nail bed to increase its contour, and that changes the nail matrix completely. Pitting of eponychium, so compressions over here, and plate growth patterns can be stopped in patients who are taking chemotherapy. So they'll get horizontal markings, which are called as jaw lines. These are some of the common complications in skin. See, splinter hemorrhages in cases of an infective endocarditis is number 10. See this vertical line, very, very important. Don't miss them. If you see them at least 2 or 3 fingers, that patient is having a vegetation around his heart, around his mitral or mitral valves. So get them echocardiograph. You can wait. Okay. Red nail is usually polycythemia, white nail is usually an anemia, brown nails usually because of excessive melanin content in cases of Addison disease, even in cases of melanoma. Brittle nails, very much important in case of hypothyroidism. Usually an exposure to skin and what like detergents and water, there will be an increased situation of that sort. Spoon nails in cases of um, uh, in case of iron deficiency, also called as chylonychia. The oncolysis, that is tinea, that is this infestation of the skin, in which you will have this lateral growths. That's usually because of fungal infection. And the cuticle invasion in lichen planus, very much important. This is the cuticle invasion. Very much depressed horizontal lines. If you see them, that is lichenoid appearance into the nail patterns. Other than this, normal vertical lines are normal in old age. If you see direct straight lines in the fingernails, that's okay. A horizontal line should be worried about. Okay, a depressed horizontal vertical line like this, that is usually lichen planus, while a reddish or a blackish line like this is usually splinter hemorrhage. The third one, it's usually a drug called as Zivodine. Okay, so this is it's a normal nail with the nail in clubbing. You can see that peacock pattern, and that is usually a sign of, usually in cases of pulmonary incompetence like prolonged COPD, you will have this symptom. So that finishes my presentation. I'm open to questions if you have any. If it's pertaining, if I know the answer, I'll be more than happy to answer. Jasul? Hello.
Hello,
Hello.
sir. How can we treat the stry after many people have stry after gymming, hard gymming?
Yeah, sir, usually striae happens when you have no adequate level of keratin layers of tissue, because you are causing a sudden decompression. The amount of skin to be coming back to normalcy, it usually takes approximately 2 to 3 months. So usually a supportive treatment, there is a supportive treatment, like you can do an abdominal binder if it's in the abdomen. Abdominal binders are mostly enough, and you have to educate the patient that this is a transient phenomenon, doesn't stay with you for long. Usually, most of the striae, unless it is secondary to Cushing's, usually if you treat the patient with an abdominal binder and educate them that it will go in a span of 3 months, because that is the cycle of for any layer of skin to come to keratinized layer, it approximately takes around 3 months. So in a span of 3 months, you will be normal. That should be educated to the patient. Patient education is more important in the case of striae.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, Dr. Jyoti ma'am, we have seen the question. We will ask that. Okay, Ashwin doctor, thank you so much for that wonderful session. So there are some queries from Dr. Jyoti ma'am. She's asking that whether this ganglion cyst can be reverted with Ruksha Sweda. I think ganglion is a different etiology, but still her question is that whether we can resolve this ganglion with a Ruksha Sweda like Valuga, Otley, etc.
Okay. Jyoti ma'am, the fact is ganglion cysts usually have a different etiology. They are formed because of nerve cell hypergrowth. So that's the usual etiology. Transient reduction in size can be achieved by Valuka-Sveda, but that's not a permanent cure. Temporarily, yes. But a much better protocol which we follow in our hospital, I have done even today, is aspiration.
So I hope that is clear for you, ma'am. So we can move on.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. Just wanted to
okay,
ask.
ma'am. You proceed. Please, ma'am, proceed.
Thank you. I have seen these types of operations also regarding this thing, but many patients complain after surgery also that they are getting it again and again. So recurrence is there.
No, that is because of faulty procedure, ma'am. See, ganglion, if ganglion, when we say it as a ganglion, it is actually a cystic lesion. So a cyst is like a rounded ball. So when you excise, you have to excise it completely. You have to go till the base. Most of the people, what they do is, it's a base, it's a ball like this. So as soon as they do the skin incision, they'll take this much out and say that it is operated, but this part stays inside. Okay, this later forms into a ganglion. So when you do a ganglion, if you are planning for ganglion excision, always when you have a skin incision, go deeper, go to the base, and remove the complete ball like thing. That is usually not done. That's a
Okay.
error of procedure. But if a ganglion is
Okay.
properly excised, it doesn't recur. And one more thing, ma'am, if you are operating on a ganglion, it is better that you make sure that it is not over a nerve. Very, very important. Because once you go to the base, ligate the nerve, the patient may not have neurological function intact. So you should make sure that your ganglion is away from the neurovascular bundle, not vascular bundle, neuro bundles.
I hope it is clear now, doctor. So we can
Jyoti
move on.
ma'am?
Jyoti ma'am, is it clear now?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. So we can move on. Doctor, our next question is that what are the general pathological investigations we should done? I think it's for the dermatological point of view.
See, it depends upon what kind of lesion you get. If you
Yes,
get
yes.
a more erythematous lesion, which is more angry looking, red colored, obviously there is a level of infection. So in those cases, it is better that you go for your regular total WBC counts. If you get a purpura sort of lesion, which is mostly hemorrhagic, ecchymotic, or like those purpuric lesions or ecchymotic lesions, bruise, those cases you might need to investigate more on the lines of clotting factors and bleeding times. So BTCT platelets can be used there. So it's basically based on the lesion. Uh, this is the general output. So it basically depends on the lesion. If you can give me a specific question like if you get this kind of a lesion, what I'm supposed to do. If you get a pus eroding lesion, total WBC count is very much legitimate. If you get a purpura like pathology in which there is a hemorrhage happening, you have seen dot hemorrhages under the skin. Usually you have platelet dysfunction, common presentation, dengue hemorrhagic fever, platelet counts are required, BTCT is required if the patient is on anticoagulants like warfarin or heparin or even streptokinase. If the patient is having bleeding tendencies, then that is the investigation. Other than that, it depends basically on what pathology you are looking. Like there is no generalized schemes. For example, a patient who is having eosinophilic reactions like eosinophilia already, he is having asthma during those pollination season. I think I have explained yesterday. In those cases, absolute eosinophil count is also a good indicator because eosinophilia can also cause dermatitis, eosinophilic dermatitis. So there is no specific like all pervasive test in dermatology. It depends upon the lesion that you get. Deepa, I have answered it.
Yeah, doctor. Yeah, it's clear. It's clear, doctor. So we can move on. The next question is, doctor, it's regarding the treatment of keloid. Whether we
Okay.
can offer any treatment. Yeah, doctor, you can proceed, doctor.
Okay. Keloid, first of all, the protocol which we follow here is ideally in a case of a keloid, usually a local injection of hydrocortisone can help, but it is not like a standard procedure. There are people who use Shara in keloids, but I'm not a big fan of that technique because at times that can even worsen the condition of the patient. Shara can be used with minimal, you can get minimal benefits, but it is better that in a keloid, try a very minimal approach. For example, if I am supposed to operate on a patient who is having a keloid, I usually will go for a very minor incision. And usually the thing that increases keloid, if at all you are creating a lesion on the skin, be it for surgical procedure or otherwise, for a cosmetical incision also, always follow the part which I said lines of Langer. You remember that slide in which I have said about lines of Langer?
Sure,
Always
doctor.
go
Sure.
parallel to a lines of Langer. Then the tendency to form keloid is lesser. And still, if you get a keloid, try removing a little bit of it and injecting it with hydrocortisone. That's a modern treatment. That's only the modern treatment.
So in that case, prevention is better than cure. That is
No,
the
you
doctor.
have to, yeah, to an extent, but some people you will have to do like a keloid patient suffering from appendicitis. We have to operate. So what we do is we put a very minimal incision. You will not usually go for your classical gridine incision in the McBurney spine. We'll go for a very minimal incision and go in and take out. And that will
Excuse
be
me,
very much parallel to the lines of Langer, not perpendicular to it. You should not cut through collagen tissue, but parallel to collagen tissue. So if the collagen tissue is arranged like this, your incision should be like this, not perpendicular to it.
Yes.
excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
These keloids form after the burn mark of burn case.
Not necessarily. No, ma'am. There is nothing. No
I think
theory
I
saying
think
that.
I think Dr. Ashwin sir, she's asking particularly a case where that has happened after an excision after a burn.
Then the
She's
only cases that you is it a case of burn, ma'am?
Yeah.
Okay. Chemical burn.
No, water fall on her skin
scald, I
and
think.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Then, ma'am, the
But it is
best option is that
it is spread on very large area. It is on her chest. That's why they are worried about it. And it's since a long year, at least 12 to 15 years ago, they are suffering from this skin keloid.
you can try with hydrocortisone injections to the keloid. That usually reduces the size of it, but doesn't completely cure it. If it's an
Okay.
extensive lesion, I think possibly a skin grafting would be a better option.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, doctor. Thank you, ma'am. So, doctor, another question is that biopsy is generally a confirmatory diagnosis for most of the diseases like psoriasis, lichen planus, etc. So, how can we really differentiate in a biopsy?
Biopsy, usually you will only do for a carcinomatous lesion, not for others.
Okay.
Biopsy, are you asking for the procedure of biopsy or what we have to check in?
What kind of clinical data we can obtain from a biopsy, doctor?
Okay, usually what we do as a true cut biopsy, which will include a little bit of hypodermis, full thickness of the dermis, and epidermis. Okay, the usual thing that any person who is looking for any pathology in skin, we usually do it only for cancer. So I'll say it in the cancer perspective of cancer. What we will check is something called as N is to C ratio. The nucleum is to cytoplasmic ratio. Okay, so if I have said, I think you might remember the previous lecture in which I said it is from the basal layer, the germinant, the basal layer that creates stem cells that come as keratinocytes. So this is a process of maturation. When you have a carcinomatous process, it usually will not allow any stem cell to stay in a resting phase. If you remember cell cycle, there is a place called as T0, called as resting phase. If it goes into T1, then it goes into a cell cycle, which is prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, and becomes a matured cell. So what happens in a cancer cell is this cycle, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, happens very quickly, so that suddenly the nucleus get divided, the chromatids go into each cell. So usually a normal cell will have, if it has 1% of cytoplasm, it should have 2% of cytoplasm. So nucleoplasm is 1% and cytoplasm is 2%. This is universally what is being followed for every cancer cell. So their mitotic numbers increase. This is called as a mitotic number. Okay, so in these cases, what happens is you will have a very small nucleus and almost the same amount as cytoplasm. So it is usually a 1:1 ratio of nucleus and cytoplasm. If you see a very thin cytoplasm around a very small nucleus, that is usually diagnostic of a in any biopsies, diagnostic of
Okay, doctor.
carcinoma. The N is to C ratio, nucleus is to cytoplasmic ratio.
Okay, doctor. So another question is about lichenification. The cause of lichenification is excessive dryness or what? If yes, then how can we, by reducing this rukshada, can we avoid it?
Yeah, it is very much possible. Lichenification, if you make the earlier you make the diagnosis, the better is the outcome in case of lichenification. Because once lichenification, even if you treat, it takes at least 3 to 4 months for the demelanization from that area.
Okay.
To reduce the blackish discoloration, it takes. So, if you have a doubt of lichen planus, start the patient on emollient therapy. Just give him some kind of a, helping procedure that can at least reduce the rubbing or the irritation that is caused to the skin. Usually, it is sun rays in most of the cases. So, if the
Okay.
patient has a
Okay.
layer that can protect him from that, very good.
Yeah.
Lichenification is something, if you can diagnose the earlier, the better. Second is atrophy.
Okay. Okay, Doctor, clear. So Dr. Varsha Dhage is asking, how we treat furuncle in Ayurveda?
Furuncle, usually, if it's a non-diabetic patient, there is usually not a requirement. If you can give a scruffing agent that can, usually a furuncle is caused because the hair follicle doesn't have a proper opening. So if you can give a mild scruffing agent, anything like basic scruffing agent, if Keralites are there, they'll know Injapul എന്ന് പറയും.
Yes,
Uh,
Doctor.
if you can have a bath with that, if
Ishika.
you can, yeah,
Ishika,
Irshika.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that if you can have a proper bath that can take off that excess of keratin that has gone into the skin base, the hair base, that itself is a treatment, and the pus will automatically come out. But if it's in a diabetic patient, things can get a bit complicated because multiple furuncles which are close together can together get inflamed, creating sinuses around them and create a carbuncle. That is difficult. So in that case, you need to excise the whole area and start the patient on broad spectrum antibiotics. Otherwise, a furuncle in a non-diabetic patient, scruffing is only required. Just make sure that the skin layers are scruffed enough.
Okay, Doctor. So the Vaidya Sankamitra is asking, how can we distinguish these lesions according to Ayurvedic perspective as mentioned in Kushta? I think that, ma'am, that will be covered in our next sessions. It will be broad enough if we answer it right now. So I move on. Yeah. What instruments should we have in OPD, like regarding dermascope and so on? I think she is asking on that.
If
Basic
you can
necessities
have,
that we need.
yeah,
Yeah.
very minimal, that depends upon the economic condition. Wood lamp is uh, costing around 3,500 to 4,000. Not required, but if you can afford it, best. Otherwise, a glass slide is something which everybody of you can find. So diascopy is something which you can practice every day. If you can have a hand lens, that is also good enough.
Okay, Doctor.
And this is the regular thing that you need in a minimal setup.
Yeah, dermatology. Okay, Doctor. So another question is, Doctor, what is the pathophysiology of rhinophyma?
Usually, the pathophysiology that happens is the same thing that happens in excess sebum production, but it happens more on the nose region and the tip of the nose because you have loose connective tissue over here. It tends to come and accumulate over here. So usually what we tend to do is either try to make sure that the sebum secretion is decreased if you have diagnosed the patient adequately early enough. Otherwise, operatively remove that sebum secretion. It is like a sebaceous cyst excision for us. But the only thing is it causes that, scrofula, like it causes that wrinkly sensation on that gassed looking nose. So you might need to do little bit of cutaneous repair also. Once you excise the rhinophyma, you might need to do some amount of cutaneous repairs also. So
Okay.
basically a glorified sebaceous cyst only.
Yeah. So we can move on. So, Doctor, can we do anything in Ayurveda for photosensitive erythema, which is very itchy? As patient is, she's asking about a patient who is a driver and he got erythema in forearm.
Okay. Usually, photosensitive erythema developing in females after menopause is something which is hormonal. So hormonal, let's say if it's a female. Now this patient, I guess, is a male. So in that case, the best thing that you can do is uh, usually ask the patient what time of the day does he have the excess of photosensitivity. Usually it will be a narrow spectrum of the light complex that creates more of irritation for him. And treatment as such, if you can give a covering cream like anything like lactocalamine lotion during his working hours is more than enough. Lactocalamine
Moisturizers will do, doctor.
See, you are not
Moisturize.
trying to moisturize, you just want a layer
Okay.
of something over there. So lactocalamine
Okay.
is best, zinc and
Okay.
lactocalamine.
Okay. Okay, doctor. So, and the thing is, doctor, diabetic patients worry a lot about their skin. So, could you explain more about the skin manifestations
Okay,
that is usually,
this is something which I have left out, and many things are there. One is intertigo. Intertigo, chronic obese patients with a fold of skin on the side of their stomach, they tend to rub each other and create all these. I think one ma'am has asked regarding folliculitis and carbuncle. So this is usually, it can create carbuncles at those places where you have a fold of skin. So usually on the sides of abdomen in a obese and diabetic patient. Second is on the back of your neck, common site of carbuncle. That is also because of rubbing with the pillows when the patient is not mobile much, tends to develop in the back of the neck. Third, one more thing in diabetes, very, very common and very, very misconceived notion in diabetes is people who take insulin on skin, they tend to give the insulin at a common location all the time. This can create subepidermal fibrosis. And usually, if the patient goes with the same location every day, that patch of skin where they give the injections, they tend to get fibrosed, and the effect of insulin doesn't reach the body. Okay, so in those cases,
okay, doctor.
you have to educate the patient regarding other sites where insulin can be used, because this area, because of multiple puncture marks, has developed multiple sclerosis patches. The sclerosis which I've said, that happens over that region, and you are basically infiltrating your insulin into a layer of sclerosis which has very minimal blood supply. Okay, so that tends to
Okay,
give
doctor.
lower effect to your insulin dosages. So those people
Okay.
usually will, the normal diabetologist, assuming that he has changed his location, they think that he needs more of insulin. Most of the patients doesn't require it. Just a site change can be good enough. Any other questions? Hello? Are there any more questions from me?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Maybe she
Yeah.
lost her contact. But sir, I want to ask one thing. The fatty
Yeah, sure,
cysts,
sir.
there are many in number in the body.
Okay. Hello?
Fatty cyst. How can we treat
What,
the
sir?
fatty cyst?
Fatty cyst.
Fat cyst. There are many.
Sir, they are usually called as lipomas. Usually,
Yeah.
if seasonally they tend to vary. One, so if you have excess amount of lipomatous lesions, that is called as multiple lipomatosis. But in those cases, conservative management doesn't work much. You can excise them. That would be better. It's not a big procedure. Medically manageable, I would suggest you to have the patient, if the patient is usually having dyslipidemia, patients who are taking atorvastatin, rosuvastatin, etc., they usually tend to have a decrease in size automatically. But otherwise, it is a surgical disease. If the patient has a cosmetically bad look because of a lipoma, it is better to excise it and leave.
But if the number is very high on the body, we cannot exercise every.
Then, sir, usually hormonal management are also advised in those cases, details of which I've not said in this seminar as such. But hormonal managements are possible, sir. Usually, you should find out why she is developing multiple lipomas like that. There are multiple, usually higher doses of, and even these surgeries, minimally invasive liposuction surgeries can also be possible. Liposuction surgeries are possible, sir. But medically not much manageable. Kanchanara Guggulu, Varunadi Kashaya, etc. can work, but they don't perform magic. They can reduce the size, but arguable and debatable.
Okay, and Dr. Jyoti Shinde is asking, is scar treatable with a cosmetic OPD procedure?
That's what I said. That is for when you get a ugly scar, that is because an ugly surgeon put his ugly hands on the wound. So a scar, if you get a scar which is hypertrophied, it means to say that the surgeon was not good enough or not aware of lines of Langer, or might not be, like in most of the lacerations, you might not get it according to lines of Langer. So if you get a laceration, a facial laceration, try following the lines of Langer, because if you follow lines of Langer and do a subcutaneous incision, I can assure you, if the patient doesn't have any tendency to form a keloid, there will not be, there will be a scar, but it will be very minimal.
Okay. And sir, how much of the external procedures will make up the skin lesions? What's your opinion regarding that?
See, basically based on the lesions, you can have many kinds of protocols. One is supporting the skin. One. Second is making sure that the excess of skin products are being scrubbed off. So you can have a scrubbing sort of techniques being used, or even you can have these nourishing sort of protocols also. So simple techniques like Kshalana with Kashayas can be good enough as a scrubbing agent, but indications should be checked properly before you start. Definitely, hydration is more important. That is one point. The other thing that is more important is that you should not take caffeine and caffeine derivatives. Chocolate, dark chocolates usually tend to uh, have adverse effects on skin lesions. So, caffeine reduction, nicotine reduction usually tends to give you a good result, and adequate hydration and supportive treatment.
Okay, doctor. Now, how to treat brittle nails? Brittle nails,
Lesion,
vitiligo,
when you
and
get a brittle
comedones.
nail,
Yeah, doctor.
uh,
Yeah.
brittle nails only or comedones?
Brittle nails, vitiligo, and comedone, doctor. I'll repeat the question, doctor. You can start with brittle nail.
Okay, with brittle nails, first make sure that the patient is not hypothyroid. How do you make sure the patient is not hypothyroid? You have an online questionnaire called as the Wayne's Diagnostic Criteria. Okay, WAYNES, Wayne's Diagnostic Criteria. You make sure that the questions are asked in a proper fashion and calculate the score. You can assume that the patient is in hypothyroid, or usually hypothyroid patients present to you with cold intolerance and palpitation to you, common signs of hypothyroidism. Or they will have cylindrical hands, okay, and sudden thinning at the layer of flexor retinaculum. So if a cylindrical hand with a thinned out flexor retinaculum, sudden development of carpal tunnel syndrome, these are indications that the patient is going towards hypothyroidism. In that case, if the patient is having a brittle nail, it is because of hypothyroidism. Treat hypothyroidism with 25 mcg, or start with the baby dosage of Thyronorm, 12.5 mcg or 25 mcg. You will have tremendous relief with brittle nails. The other thing that can cause brittle nails, other than this,
Vitiligo.
is deficient calcium intake. One more thing, when you have deficient calcium intake, is chronic use of rabiprazole. Proton pump inhibitors can create calcium deficiency that can also cause brittle nails. So patient on rabiprazole for long can also develop brittle nails.
Okay, doctor. So next is about vitiligo.
So with vitiligo, melanin pathology it is. So melanin is usually produced by, as per I have already said in the slide, it is because of absence of tyrosine, the base component. Tyrosine absence is what causes vitiligo in the first place. So substitute proteinaceous diet, make sure that tyrosine is being given. Tyrosine tablets are available. Tyrosine is given, as well as supportive treatment. Usually they tend to, Bakuchi is good from Ayurveda perspective.
Yeah.
And you have
Okay,
a
doctor.
vitiligo scoring scale also. That
Sure,
should do
doctor.
the work, but vitiligo tends to recur. So don't assure the patient this is done for once and for all.
Yeah, even Ayurveda says so. So, doctor,
Yeah.
moving on, the Ayurvedic approach towards psoriasis. I
It
think,
depends on,
yeah,
yeah, it's a very
respect.
expansive, like it's a very
Yeah,
vast
yeah,
topic.
yeah.
But
Sure,
on an
doctor.
outset, you
This,
should
yeah.
know the type of psoriasis that you get. If it's flaky psoriasis, it means to say that there is excess amount of skin being grown up. So that is something to do with the basal layer of skin. If you have erythematous pathology, that is usually with the stratum germinatim of a layer. So basically, in case of psoriasis, if I speak about Ayurvedic aspect, you should make sure that the mitotic numbers in the stratum basilar layer is minimalized. So what we say in Ayurveda, as per our techniques, is it is a hyper-excitable state of the stratum basilar layer. So you should make sure that the mitotic, the amount of new cell production is reduced in the stratum basilar layer, then it reduces the plaque formation. So whatever, like the skin has Bhrajaga, Pitta and Kapha also. So if you can balance Vata, Pitta, Kaphas in the skin layers to reduce the mitotic figures, that is more than enough to reduce psoriatic patches.
Okay. Okay, doctor. So, doctor, self-tanning is it good or bad? What is your take on that? When Ayurveda says about Niraktis Veda, Adapa modalities, and other,
Tanning is something different, and
yeah,
Niragni
yeah,
Sweta.
Adapas as
Okay, Atapa Sweta,
different.
that is
Yeah,
usually a misconception.
yeah,
The thing why a tanning is done in abroad countries is because they have longer winters.
yeah,
So they
yeah,
have a
doctor.
vitamin deficiency happening for almost 6 to 7 months. So when they have a summer, that is their only time during which they can actually replenish their vitamin D sources.
Okay.
So that is why they go for a tanning. Indians doesn't
Yeah,
need a tanning. We are more
sure.
towards the tropics, so we don't
Yeah.
need a tanning. People who
Okay.
are like towards the Cape of Comorin, Cape of like much more away from the equator can have tanning, but otherwise it's not good that you do tanning. Mild forms
Okay.
are okay,
Okay.
but severe forms not required.
Okay, doctor. So, comedones, that question is coming repeatedly, so I'm asking doctor. In comedones and face, particularly in face, can Lekhana be helpful?
You have to always check whether there is a pustular lesion or not. Because if you do lekhana when there is a pustule inside, that heals by a scar.
Okay.
So if it is prior to that, if it is just only an open head, as you have seen in that image which I have shown you, if you see that it is just an open comedome or a black closed comedome, just a comedome and not secondary infected, yes. But scraping is not required. Lodra Churna is equally good.
Okay. Okay, doctor. So, and the question is, how can we differentiate pityriasis alba, like diarrheasis alba, and fungal infection? If it comes difficult to differentiate, then how can we treat them? So the question goes like that.
Tyriasis
Yeah.
is usually caused by a species called as Malassea, and that is a fungi, and it is usually a fat-loving fungi. So places you have more of fat is the place where you have more of tyriasis lesions.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's, yeah, it's clear, doctor. So psoriatic patients after treatment, the plaques have gone. I think it's a case, doctor. The skin thickness is reduced, but now black patches after shedding of scales is coming. So what do next? What to do next? Yeah, doctor.
This is usually because this is what I said. Primary morphology was a flaky lesion, and the secondary morphology it is starting to behave like a lichenification. Okay, so there is some chronic irritation mostly in that patient, or if that is not present, usually a dose of good dose of Guduchi or Manjesta, Raktashodhaka Dravyas, and a proper anilomana can help significantly.
Okay, doctor. Doctor, we have PGs as well as students in our session. So for them, I'm asking on behalf of them, like any specific criteria or tool, including questionnaires to assess the progress and regress of skin conditions. Can you mention a few like psoriasis, PASI score, something like that, doctor?
VASI score for psoriasis common. There is another technique of psoriatic like with complications, the psoriatic index criteria developed by American Center for Rheumatology. That's also available
Okay.
online.
Yeah.
That even includes psoriatic arthropathy, which we have not touched at all. So psoriatic patches, their lesions, their number of lesions present in trunk. So it's basically like your burn, the surface area of the skin that is getting involved. There is a scoring for that along with complications. So there is a psoriatic index criteria. You can push your patients through those criteria, but not necessarily required because those are like in cases of extensive psoriasis. Then you might need these, but focal flexor psoriasis, gutted psoriasis here and there, 10, 20 spots, not required.
Right. Oh, we can relay this on better on like assessing the quality of life, doctor, or
See, first of all, in dermatology, what you have to understand is a patient education is a mainstay.
yeah,
You have
yes.
to make sure that the patient, if it's a recoverable lesion, say that to the patient that it is recoverable. But if there is something which can have a waning and waxing pattern, educate the patient priorly, and make sure that the patient follows certain norms, no matter what. So, like people who tend to eat more of these chocolate derivatives, people who tends to eat these red meat tend to get psoriatic patches quite faster. So those kind of things, if you can do minor changes in diet, patient education, I think is the mainstay.
Yeah. So, Doctor, acanthosis nigricans at neck region, is it curable by Ayurveda?
See, acanthosis nigricans, I said, is actually a pre-diabetic lesion. So if you control diabetes, acanthosis may not grow, but at least papillomas will not happen.
Okay,
See,
doctor.
when you have acanthosis nigricans, the patient is pre-diabetic. You can see this very much prevalent in cases of PCOS.
Okay, doctor.
So
Which lab
papilloma
investigation is required? Another allied question, doctor. So I'm interrupting. Any lab investigation is required for this particular acanthosis nigricans? It's very much
usually a
evident
lab
from the
tech
clinical. Yeah, doctor.
pre-diabetic, the best lab investigation would be a GTT, glucose tolerance test, not much practiced these days. A glucose tolerance test would be best rather than a fasting and postprandial. Not even an NC, GTT. Ask the patient for a GTT, see for the curve. If it's a bell-shaped normal curve, which reduces sugar to normal volume, the patient is euglycemic, normoglycemic. If the patient is somewhere in that doesn't form a bell curve, and if you see that it is deviating to the left or deviating to the right, tends to have a tenting towards the right, that means to say that the patient is pre-diabetic. GTT
Okay,
is
doctor.
a investigation choice.
Best choice. Okay, doctor. Doctor, varicose eczema. Could you elaborate on that, doctor?
Okay, varicose eczema. Patients in varicose eczema, first try control the varicose veins. That by itself will take care a little bit of the eczema. And eczematous lesions. The problem with eczematous lesion is in venous disorders. When you get eczema, the blood that is reached there is already in such a situation that it cannot provide nutrition to the skin there. Okay, so
Okay, doctor.
varicose eczema, first of all, try to reduce the itching of the patient. That lesion itches very badly. So
Okay.
try reducing the itching of the patient. Usually we apply emollient creams. Our Jatyadi Taila is of good use. Murivanna, which is in Kerala practice, also of good use. That is temporarily to reduce the itching sensation over that spot. Kashaya
Yeah,
Parisheka is
doctor.
also good. And
Okay.
eczema over a period of time, they tend to flake off. But in the meantime, concentrating completely on the eczema, don't forget the varicose vein. Treat varicose vein as primary. The eczema is a remnant of what you have as varicose vein. So treat the varicose vein primary much better. You will have treatment of the varicose vein goes, treat for the varicose eczema locally, treat for varicose vein internally as well as with stocking therapy. Once the patient recovers, it will be for good. Most
Okay.
of us will only
Okay.
concentrate on eczema only.
Sure. Okay, doctor. So, doctor, the skin manifestations can be seen in some connective tissues disorders like SLE,
Yes.
scleroderma, and etc. So,
Yes.
how important is that, doctor, in diagnosing part?
As the name itself suggests, it is connective tissue disorder.
Yeah.
So places where you have connective tissue, the main component of connective tissue of throughout our body are three types of collagen. So places where collagen are found are also the location of all these connective tissue disorders, and that is why you have skin eruptions, skin lesions in autoimmune disorders like SLE, you have in scleroderma, etc.
Okay.
The question was? Can you repeat?
How important? Yeah, how important is getting the signs of skin manifestation in diagnosing this kind of diseases like connective tissue
Very,
disorders?
very important. I can't stress
Yeah,
enough.
doctor.
Heliopteric
Yeah.
rash, Grotton's papule on the knuckles, heliopteric Groton papules in the knuckle region. You can
Okay.
already diagnose the patient as having what? If you have Grotton's papule, that is dermatomyositis. Heliopteric rash, butterfly rash on the face, malar rash,
It is SLE.
typical of
SLE,
SLE,
doctor. Okay, doctor.
destroyed lupus in the hands, very much of SLE,
Yeah, lupus again. Okay, doctor.
and calcinosis cutis. Your
So it is
finger,
confirmatory, right, doctor?
yeah, most of the times,
Yeah.
look of the patient, skin of the patient is good enough to confirm.
Okay. Okay, doctor. So with that, how to treat recurrent tinea infections, doctor?
Usually, tinea infection is not recurrent. It is because of deficient follow-up.
Okay.
Okay, when you
Okay,
have
doctor.
tinea of any sort, it needs extensive therapy, at least of 1.5 to 2 months. So pre-educate the
Okay.
patient for that.
Okay.
Temporarily, it shows relief. The problem with fungi is fungal lesions usually tend to have a flagella and a spore at its tip. So with
Okay.
your extensive treatment, you can remove of this flagellae.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the spore remains,
Okay.
and the spore
Okay.
in a conducive environment like excess of moisture tends to develop again the infection. So
Okay.
fungal treatment usually requires extensive treatment, not just 5 days, 10 days. Immediately you will have a relief. That is because all the flagellae of the sporadias are gone, but the spores are still present there, and that is potent to
Okay.
cause another infection.
Okay, doctor. So next is regarding COVID-19, doctor.
Hmm.
Can you explain this pathology
Disseminated
relate?
intravascular coagulopathy.
Yeah, DIC, doctor.
Okay, that is usually considered as like the what is understood as the in the World Health Organization is a part of extensive studies of human heart, which is also done
Okay.
at Jayadeva Institute in Bangalore.
Okay.
The post like the in these people who are suffering from COVID, their postmortem specimen shows that there are multiple thrombus formations. Disseminated intravascular coagulopathy basically means because of cytokine storm, because of cytokines present inside your body, they suddenly tend to create a prolific storm, like multiple like a good amount of cytokine is released into your skin, and that causes haywire reactions. One of the common haywire reactions of a cytokine storm, excess amount of cytokines and interleukins inside your skin or like your blood, is differential ability to clot and bleed.
Okay. Okay,
So
doctor.
he tends to develop microthrombus very quickly, and those microthrombus can occlude vessels, capillary vessels.
Yeah.
So that is the usual cause. It is because of a
Yeah,
cytokine
yeah.
storm that happens with COVID-19. That is the reason why
Yeah.
COVID-19 patients are given steroids. Cytokine storm
Steroid.
is reduced by excess amount of steroids.
Yes.
Autoimmune
Yes.
reaction.
Yeah, yeah, it's clear, doctor. So next is a case like a boy of 11 years complains of fissures at both heels. So the patient from the patient part, they are saying it is psoriasis. Could it be? What is the prognosis?
You have to rule out fungal, obviously, ma'am. If he children usually tend to get fungal infections quite faster, so you need to check. KOH stain can be done. You take a proper cotton bud, like what you put in your ear. If you can put that and give the people for a KOH staining, you can understand it is most possible that it is fungal. If the child goes barefoot most of the time. If that is not the case, then it can be psoriasis. I don't think it is psoriatic.
Okay, I think it is
Go
clear,
for a
Jyoti
KOH
ma'am.
stain.
KH strain. Okay, doctor.
Very simple. 2% KOH under a slide. We are
Okay.
not good enough to check it because see, it's basically take the stain, put it on a slide, and pour 2% KOH and put a slide over it. The only thing that we are not technically sound in that is why, because we'll understand the gas bubbles when you put that slide over it. Those gas bubbles will be falsely interpreted as by us as pores.
Okay.
So these people in the lab, they have a better idea of what is a spore and what is gas. They'll keep the slide in such a way that gas doesn't get trapped inside the slide and the covering slide. So KOH staining technique can be done. It hardly cost, I think in Udupi and all, it costs hardly 80 rupees.
Okay. So it's cheap also. I can do it. So that's a doctor.
But don't misinterpret the gas bubble for a spore. They both look round. So don't misinterpret.
Okay, doctor. So another question is, doctor, it's a general one. Does Abhinga have any absorption that is happening into the skin? It's a general
Yes,
doubt.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
Could you explain it later? Yeah.
Abhyanga followed by Svedana has the highest absorption. This technique was known to our acharyas long back. If you have seen have you heard of iontophoretic technique in modern medicine? Iontophoresis.